I've known Carolyn for years. She's one of those people who keeps every gift, not because she needs them, but because she doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You probably know someone like that too. Maybe you're like that. It started with a little gold toad her aunt gave her, then a crystal bowl from a church friend, some red bracelets from her niece. Nothing crazy, just small things people said were lucky. But the house changed. Not in a big dramatic way, just slowly. The money started slipping. Her sleep got worse, and the whole space felt like it was holding its breath. Now, I'm not here to spook you, but I am here to tell you, in Feng Shui, even a small object can carry cursed energy. Not because it's evil, but because of where it came from, what it went through, and what it's been holding before it got to you. This video is for people who love their home, women like Carolyn, and men too, who find more peace in their kitchen than in any meeting room. If this kind of wisdom speaks to you, if you've ever felt like you're doing everything to stay afloat, and it still isn't flowing, thank you for being here. Feel free to hit like, subscribe, or even drop a comment below. It helps YouTube know you're part of this quiet shift, because we're about to walk through Carolyn's story, one lucky gift at a time, and see how Feng Shui energy, when ignored, can slowly drain your wealth, luck, and peace without saying a word. You know how some folks keep things just because it feels wrong to let them go? That's where this story starts. Carolyn had this little golden toad sitting on the windowsill in her dining room. One of those Feng Shui money frogs, the kind with a coin in its mouth. You've probably seen them in nail salons or maybe tucked behind a cash register at some tiny family-owned store. Well, hers came from Aunt Linda. And I don't mean a random aunt, I mean Linda, one with crystals on every shelf, bells on every doorknob, and a Himalayan salt lamp in every corner like it's guarding national secrets. Linda swore the toad brought her luck. Which is funny, because last I checked, Linda had filed for bankruptcy twice, changed addresses 5 times, and still owed Carolyn $50 from Christmas 2018. But you know how it is. When someone gives you something and says, "This brought me luck," you don't question it. You thank them, you place it somewhere respectful, and you leave it there. That's what Carolyn did. And from that moment, things started shifting. Not overnight, but you could feel the house dragging its feet. Bills felt heavier. The mailbox didn't bring good news anymore. The dining room got weirdly cold. Like the kind of cold that doesn't come from temperature, it comes from something sitting in the air too long. She didn't even realize it until we were chatting over coffee one morning, and I told her how I'd finally cleared a shelf that had been making me anxious for months. She blinked and said, "You know what's funny? I've had this toad for years, and lately it just doesn't feel right." I nodded, because I'd felt it too. Every time I visited her, I'd notice it sitting there, quiet, watching. And the room, well, the energy was like molasses. Thick, slow, heavy in a way that makes you want to finish your tea and leave early. Carolyn's always been sensitive to energy, even if she doesn't call it that. She'll say things like, "This room feels crowded," even when there's nothing in it but air and a lamp. But she's also polite. She didn't want to offend Aunt Linda. Didn't want to toss something that was meant to be lucky. And that's how the toad stayed long past its welcome. What I've learned, especially with Feng Shui, is that intention matters, but so does history. If something comes from a place of struggle, confusion, or bad money habits, even if it looks like a charm, it might be carrying more than you bargained for. That frog wasn't cursed in the horror movie sense. It was just soaked in the wrong kind of memory. Gifts are powerful, not just because of what they are, but because of where they've been, who they've been around, what they've absorbed. Carolyn didn't need a new charm. She needed to clear the old one and create space for new flow. So we made it into a tiny ritual. Nothing big. We placed the toad in a paper bag with some salt, thanked it for whatever purpose it thought it served, and set it outside in the morning sun before letting it go for good. She didn't burn sage, didn't do a dance. Just let it go with respect. And you know what? A week later, Carolyn called and said, "Hey, I don't know if it's connected, but the refund from that weird bill came through. Listen, I'm not here to tell you that every lucky object is secretly cursed, but I am here to say this. If something was meant to bring money but your cash flow's been drying up ever since it showed up, maybe it's not lucky anymore. Sometimes, the thing blocking your wealth isn't the clutter in your drawer, it's the clutter in your energy. And the tiniest object can hold the loudest echo. Energy doesn't ask for permission. It just settles where it's allowed to stay." That toad had long expired its purpose, but Carolyn had been too polite to ask it to leave. We laughed about it later. I told her, "At least Linda didn't give you a Feng Shui turtle. That thing would have never moved." You know, there's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like something's echoing in the background, even when you can't hear a thing. That's the kind of silence Carolyn's front porch started to carry. After she hung up the wind chime Janet gave her. Now, Janet's great. She works part-time with Carolyn at the florist shop. She's the cheerful type, always in yoga pants, talks about Mercury retrograde, and once brought in celery juice for everyone at 9 a.m. like it was normal. She meant well. She really did. She found this wind chime on sale at a Sunday craft market. Metal tubes, soft-sounding, hand-painted flower design. She gave it to Carolyn and said something like, "It's supposed to help with flow, good energy, you know." So Carolyn smiled, thanked her, and hung it right outside the front door. It took about a week before the vibe in that entryway started feeling off. I remember standing out front, waiting for her to unlock the door one afternoon, and thinking, why does this space feel hollow? Not spooky, not scary, just like something was missing but still very present. Like sound that didn't land where it was supposed to. Inside, Carolyn said she'd been feeling tired coming home. Her mail was piling up. Little chores kept getting delayed. She said her house started to feel like it didn't want to be opened. And that wind chime? It never really chimed. It clicked, tinged, tapped weirdly in the wind like it was unsure of its own voice. Carolyn's front door faces east. In Feng Shui, that's tied to family, beginnings, and spring energy. It's a space that needs gentle, growing movement. But the chime was all wrong for it. Too many metal tubes in a space that needs more wood and earth. Too sharp, too stiff. It wasn't inviting good flow. It was blocking it. Creating an echo trap where energy enters, gets confused, then loops back out before it can settle in. And here's the thing. Not every wind chime works for every home. You don't just hang one and call it a day. Placement matters. Direction matters. Even what kind of material it's made of matters. Carolyn had metal hitting metal in the wrong direction, causing little ripples of blocked energy that made her space feel unsettled without her realizing why. Feng Shui isn't just about what you place. It's about where, why, and what it's echoing through. Eventually, we figured it out together. I suggested she take it down for a week just to see. She wrapped it in cloth, gently placed it in the garage, and within 3 days, she called and said, "Hey, I finally slept through the night without waking up." The mail pile started shrinking. The entryway didn't feel like it was flinching anymore. And that weird hollow silence? Gone. And hey, if this feels familiar, if you've ever felt like your home should feel like a safe landing place, but lately it just echoes back stress or silence, you're not the only one. That's why we make these videos. To bring light to the quiet things. So if you feel it too, like, subscribe, or share this with someone who's trying to make peace where they live. Carolyn didn't throw it away. She didn't want to, so she reused the parts. Carolyn didn't throw it away. She didn't want to, so she reused the parts. She turned one of the rods into a little plant stake, another into a drawer pull. Just shifted the energy. Let it move into something else. And that's the lesson. You don't have to destroy what's not working. Sometimes, you just have to stop putting it where it doesn't belong. When energy gets confused, luck gets quiet. And if your front door greets confusion every day, your wealth and peace won't stay long. Now, every time Janet visits, she asks where the chime is. And Carolyn just smiles and says, "It found a softer way to sing." You ever wear something that didn't feel like yours? Not clothes. I mean something small like a bracelet or ring that just sat heavy on your body no matter how light it actually was? That's what happened to Carolyn with those red string bracelets. They were a gift from Taylor, her niece. Sweet girl, 20-something, into crystals, TikTok rituals, and manifestation boards. Taylor had just gotten back from a spiritual retreat in Sedona and brought Carolyn a pair of red string bracelets she bought from a tiny shop near a cactus garden. She said they were for protection, money, energy, and good luck flow. Carolyn, being Carolyn, thanked her. She slipped them on and wore them every day. But about 2 weeks in, she started feeling wrong. At first, it was little things. Forgetfulness, dropping keys, feeling like her mornings had no rhythm. Then came the headaches, the kind that sit right at the back of your eyes, like your brain's holding tension you didn't sign up for. And she started getting these weird tension pockets in her neck and lower back, like her energy was collecting in the wrong places. That's when she called me. Not for help, just to chat. But I could tell something had shifted. Carolyn always has a warmth to her voice. This time it felt like it was running on half battery. I stopped by a few days later and saw the bracelets. 2 thin red cords tied tight around her wrist. They looked pretty. They looked right. But the air in the room? It felt overly still. Like even the dust had given up moving. She said she'd been feeling disconnected. Couldn't focus. Money felt tighter, even though nothing had changed. She was snapping at little things. And her houseplants, oddly, were all turning pale, especially the ones in the living room. Now, I'm not one to blame a bracelet for a bad day. But Feng Shui teaches us that energy moves through the things we carry. And just because something is meant to be protective, doesn't mean it's meant to protect you. Those bracelets were filled with Taylor's intentions, her energy, her emotions. All good things if they stayed with Taylor. But on Carolyn, It was like wearing someone else's skin. Too tight in the wrong spots. Too loose where she needed grounding. Feng Shui isn't just about placement. It's about resonance. And nothing blocks energy faster than carrying something that doesn't match your personal flow. We sat down together that afternoon. Carolyn took off the bracelets and placed them in a small bowl of water with a pinch of sea salt. Just a way to clear the charge. We left them out in the sun for the rest of the day. And by that evening, Carolyn said she felt like she could breathe again. Not just physically, but like her brain stopped buzzing. She didn't throw the bracelets away. She wrapped them in cloth and tucked them into her keep but not wear drawer. The place for sentimental things that don't need to live on your body anymore. Sometimes that's the best fix. Your body knows when it's carrying borrowed energy. And if something meant for luck starts draining your peace, maybe it's not cursed, but it's also not aligned. The next week, she cleaned her living room top to bottom. Didn't even tell me she planned to. She just said, "I woke up and felt like the energy in there had been waiting for permission to move again." That's when I knew. Sometimes the first thing you need to remove isn't clutter. It's connection. There's something about mirrors that makes energy behave differently. They reflect, yes. But sometimes they hold. They don't just bounce light. They carry stories, especially when they've belonged to someone else and have seen things you'll never know. That's what Carolyn learned with the mirror from the garage sale. It wasn't even a gift from anyone else. She bought it for herself, said she just liked the frame. Old brass edges, little floral carvings, kind of dusty in a way that made it look like it had survived 5 decades in one room. It cost $5. She thought she scored a find. Hung it in her hallway near the laundry room, small, quiet space with no windows. She figured the mirror would open it up a little. Instead, it closed something off. That hallway used to feel like nothing. A pass-through. But once that mirror went up, it got thick. I don't mean dirty. I mean the energy got heavy. Carolyn told me she started skipping that hallway when she could. Took the long way around to grab the towels. Said she felt weird every time she passed by, like her thoughts slowed down when she walked past it. I stopped by one Sunday and stood there for a minute. And I swear to you, it felt like the light got quieter near that wall. Not darker, just muffled. Like the mirror was absorbing whatever brightness the space had. Feng Shui teaches us that mirrors multiply what they face. If they reflect clutter, they double chaos. If they face a door, they can push money flow right back out. And if they carry energy from a previous owner, especially one tied to loss or grief, they can hold that stuck vibration like a sponge nobody wrung out. That mirror had been in someone else's home for years. A home Carolyn didn't know. A life she wasn't part of. But she brought that mirror into her space, without knowing what kind of energy was still clinging to the glass. Here's where it gets spooky in a quiet way. Every time Carolyn walked by it, she'd feel drained. And it didn't just stop with her. Her dog Mylor refused to go down that hallway. He'd stand at the edge and just stare. Sometimes growl low. Sometimes turn back around like something told him, not today. Now listen, I'm not saying mirrors are haunted, but I am saying they can hold enough emotional imprint to disturb the energy flow in a home, especially if they're placed wrong. That hallway became what I call a chi trapa place where Feng Shui energy didn't move forward. It circled, looped, got louder in its silence. So Carolyn did what she always do, Slow, thoughtful, and kind. She took the mirror down. Didn't smash it. Didn't panic. Just wiped it clean with a damp cloth, whispered a thank you, and wrapped it in a pillowcase before storing it in her shed. Then she burned a bit of sage in that hallway, opened the windows, and ran the laundry with music on for an hour, just to get things moving again. She didn't overdo it. She just let the house breathe. And that night, she said Milo went down the hallway and curled up by the dryer like it was no big deal. Energy doesn't need to shout. It just needs somewhere to sit. And that mirror had been sitting too long with someone else's sorrow. We laughed about it later. I told her if I ever see a mirror at a garage sale for under $10, I'm asking it questions before I bring it home. You know how some things just sit? Not loud, not messy, just quietly sitting in a way that makes the whole room feel like it's holding its breath? That's how Carolyn's entryway felt after she placed the crystal bowl there. It was a birthday gift from her church friend, Marlene. Pretty, heavy, made of cut glass, with coins inside, some shiny, some old, wrapped in a golden ribbon and a little card that said, "For prosperity and luck." Carolyn didn't question it. She smiled, thanked Marlene, and placed it right on her entry table. The first thing you'd see when you walked through the front door. She figured it was Feng Shui friendly. Coins equals wealth. Crystal equals clarity. Front door equals flow. It looked perfect. But sometimes what looks right isn't what feels right. I remember the first time I noticed it. I walked in and felt like the air got slower. Not heavy, just paused. It's hard to describe unless you've felt it. Like the space had forgotten how to welcome people. It wasn't bad energy. It was stuck energy, the kind that doesn't know where to go. Carolyn started mentioning how guests didn't linger. Packages were getting delayed. She even said her houseplants near the door were yellowing, just the ones next to the bowl. And money? Well, she joked that everything lately felt like it cost just a little more than she had. Feng Shui teaches us that the entryway is the mouth of qi. It's where energy enters your home, and what you place there affects what gets to stay. That bowl was acting like a stopper. It wasn't allowing lucky energy to move. It was holding it, gripping it too tight. And when wealth energy gets trapped at the entrance, it never reaches the kitchen, the bedroom, or the bank account. That's when Carolyn realized the bowl wasn't bad. It was just carrying someone else's energy. Turns out, the coins came from Marlene's sister, who had gone through a long, messy divorce, and gave them away to move on. Well, those coins still had grief on them. And the crystal? It was beautiful, but it had spent years in a cabinet nobody opened. It didn't know how to flow anymore. Carolyn didn't freak out. She just shifted the story. She emptied the bowl, cleaned each coin with water and salt, let them dry in sunlight for a full day. Then she donated half to a local shelter donation jar and used the other half to plant good energy. She moved the bowl to a side table, filled it with fresh lemons and a few bay leaves, and let the entryway breathe again. Within a week, she told me 2 things changed. Her Amazon orders started arriving on time, and for the first time in a while, she got an unexpected refund from the electric company. Coincidence? Maybe. But I believe when we stop holding energy too tightly, we start letting in what was trying to reach us. The front door isn't just a way in, it's a way through. And sometimes, letting go of the thing that looked lucky is the real feng shui fix you didn't know you needed. We laughed later, like always. I told her next year I'd get her a cactus. She said, only if it's been emotionally cleared first. Some things in a house don't break. They just stop. They sit still, day after day, doing nothing and saying even less. But somehow, they hold time hostage. And in a space where energy is already struggling to breathe, that kind of silence becomes its own kind of trap. Carolyn never meant to keep the clock. It was one of those things you end up with. A neighbor had moved out quickly and left a pile of donations on the sidewalk. A few frames, some half-burnt candles, and this old wooden wall clock, still elegant, still intact, but no longer ticking. Carolyn saw it while walking Milo. She told me later it looked too pretty to let someone trash it. So she brought it inside, dusted it, didn't bother fixing it, just hung it in her den above the shelf where she kept bills, coupons, and an old mug full of pens that didn't work. At first, nothing seemed different. But week by week, that room grew quieter in a strange way. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. Just paused. Like the space was waiting for something that never came. That den used to be her flow zone. She paid bills in there, caught up on paperwork, sometimes just sat with her tea and a good list. But after the clock moved in, things started to stall. The energy felt like it went flat, like the room had lost its current. She started pushing tasks to tomorrow, but tomorrow never brought the spark back. It wasn't that Carolyn was being lazy. It was like her momentum had been misplaced and neither of us saw it clearly at first. Until she started saying things like, "Why can't I finish anything in here?" Or, "I just feel behind and I don't know why." Meanwhile, the light in that room dimmed weirdly, like the window forgot how to pull in the sun. And even Milo, her dog who loved napping under that table, just stopped walking in altogether. The flow didn't just slow down, it vanished. There's something especially frustrating about being stuck when everything around you looks fine. Bills stacked neatly, pens in a cup, calendar still hanging. And yet, nothing happens. Carolyn started feeling like she couldn't keep up with anything. She missed a credit card payment for the first time in 10 years. Not because she didn't have the money, but because she kept forgetting the envelope was even there. Her sense of luck started fading. Money came in, but didn't seem to stay. She'd pay one thing and another would pop up out of nowhere. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was fogged. And that clock sitting dead above her head every time she walked in had quietly become a symbol of stuck energy, stuck thought, and stuck fortune. That room became the place where her clarity went to hide. You ever keep something around just because you feel bad letting it go? That's what that clock was. Not helpful, not moving, not necessary, but it had charm. It was gifted by accident, and guilt is a powerful decorator. But while it sat frozen in time, Carolyn's entire money rhythm froze with it. Late fees, tiny tech issues that cost her more cash, missed discounts, double-billed services she didn't catch until months later. She didn't even realize she'd stopped standing fully upright in that room. That's how energy works. It trains your body to match it. That clock wasn't cursed, but it was a loop with no exit. And loops quietly leak your luck over time. Feng Shui sees clocks as representations of movement time, progress, rhythm. When a clock runs, it supports energetic flow. It reminds the mind to move forward, to act, to stay present in time. But when a clock stops, especially in an active space like a den, kitchen, or workspace, it signals stillness. The brain starts picking up messages like, "Nothing urgent. You can't keep up. You're behind, so why bother?" If that clock also came from a previous owner, especially someone who left abruptly, under stress or loss, you're not just dealing with mechanical stillness. You're absorbing emotional residue. Feng Shui doesn't just map how energy flows. It maps how energy gets stuck. And money, luck, even physical health, they follow flow. So when a symbolic anchor like a dead clock blocks forward energy in a shared room, you get real-world effects. Missed cash, lost wealth moments, mental fog, and decision fatigue. It's not magic. It's momentum. And when that dies, so does the flow. Carolyn didn't throw it away out of anger. She never does that. She wrapped the clock in an old blue towel, wrote "Release with thanks" on a note, and put it in her garage beside the donation box. Then we opened the window, lit a rosemary candle, and wiped the shelf top to bottom. She put on a playlist that used to help her focus: instrumental jazz, no lyrics. Then she sat down. Just sat. Breathed. Let the room reset itself. That afternoon, she paid 4 bills. Sorted every piece of mail. Even returned a pair of shoes she'd forgotten were sitting by the door for a month. You could feel the rhythm crawl back in. Not fast, but real. When I asked her later how she felt, she laughed and said, "It's weird, but that clock had more control over my head than I thought." And then she added, "Milo's sleeping in the corner again. I guess even he knew it was time to let time go." Not every gift is a blessing. Some show up wrapped in shiny paper and soft words, but carry energy that quietly turns your home into a trap. And I only figured that out after watching Susan spiral. Right after she unwrapped what she thought was a lucky charm. You know that feeling when something in the house shifts but you can't point to what? That's what started happening after Susan brought home that jade elephant. It was a birthday gift from an old coworker. Looked elegant, sure, tiny red tassels, shiny green glaze, little gold coin under one foot. Feng Shui-wise, you'd think it symbolized wealth, luck, all that good stuff. But her house didn't feel lucky. Something about it just slowed her whole space down. The room it sat in got heavy, like it didn't want her to be in there. She stopped reading in her usual chair. Even the dog avoided that side of the room. Money got weird. Projects that used to flow in blocked. Paychecks got delayed. Her calendar, which was usually full, started looking quiet. But not the good kind of quiet. I told her once, "Your energy feels muted." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't get it yet. It wasn't just about the money. It was like her whole house was dragging her with it. There's a Feng Shui truth people forget. It's not the thing, it's the energy behind it. Especially with gifts. When you bring something into your home, you're not just bringing in an object. You're bringing in whatever came attached to it. That jade elephant might have been beautiful, but it was soaked in unresolved energy. Old workplace competition, bitterness, maybe even jealousy. Feng Shui doesn't just care about how things look. It's about what they hold. And when something holds blocked energy, it doesn't just sit there quietly. It interferes. Your cash flow slows. Your lucky breaks fade. You start second-guessing yourself. You start missing things: emails, deadlines, gut instincts. It's not a curse like in the movies. It's a quiet jam in your energy lines. That's how luck gets blocked. Susan always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, even when they didn't deserve it. She told me she didn't want to be the suspicious type. But there's a line between being kind and being wide open to anything. That coworker wasn't just anyone. They'd iced her out during a promotion cycle. Spread a rumor once that almost cost her a client. So yeah, the gift was wrapped nicely, but the energy underneath? Cursed in the quietest way. It wasn't forgiveness. It was unfinished business disguised as a favor. And Susan, bless her, brought that right into her wealth corner. Not her fault, but not great either. I told her once, it's like accepting soup from someone who's always hated your cooking. She laughed, but she knew what I meant. You don't just taste the soup. You absorb the weird intention. You feel it in your stomach later. You wonder why you're tired the next day. And you never think to blame the gift? That elephant was like that. Looked harmless. But every time she walked past it, her thoughts got heavier. Like money was supposed to come but kept taking a detour. Because energy always flows to where it feels safe. And that shelf didn't feel safe anymore. She didn't figure it out from a book. It was trial and error. She started journaling. Her space noticed her mood dropped every time she spent time in that room. Started getting headaches near the elephant shelf. Tried to shake it off. Then one night, she searched online. Feng Shui elephant gift blocked energy. Turns out elephants are power symbols in Feng Shui, but only if gifted with clean energy and placed right. If not, they can hold on to old intentions like emotional sponges, especially when they're holding coins or standing in certain poses. And if you put them near money zones without checking the source, you risk blocking your own flow. So we did what felt right. No drama, no burning sage in circles or chanting to the moon. We just took it down, wrapped it in soft cloth, thanked it for what it had brought even if it was just a lesson. Then we drove it to the donation center, dropped it off gently, didn't look back. When she got home, we opened the windows, cleaned the shelf with warm lemon water, let the sun hit the wood for the first time in months. It felt different, lighter. The kind of light that doesn't just brighten a room but clears the air inside your chest. 2 days later, she got a random check from a client who disappeared last year. Emails started rolling in again. She even booked a vacation she'd been too broke for just a week before. Sometimes Feng Shui healing isn't loud. It's just a quiet unblocking. Now, every time someone gives her a decorative gift, she does a little energy check. Holds it, waits, feels. She calls it her vibe scan. Says it works better than TSA. We joke about starting a support group. People who've been Feng Shui ambushed by pretty objects. But hey, it taught her this. Just because something looks expensive doesn't mean it's not draining you. And honestly, that's one of the best Feng Shui tricks I've ever learned. Right after. Don't decorate with guilt. It's wild how long we can live with something that blocks us, just because it looks harmless. But Feng Shui doesn't care about good intentions. It follows energy, and energy follows what you allow. You'd be surprised how many money blocks come from quiet corners. How much wealth gets delayed by a gift you kept out of guilt. Or how often your lucky flow stalls because your space is trying to protect you from something you forgot to notice. But the moment you clear even one of those, the cash, the energy, the peace, they start to move again. If this kind of wisdom speaks to you, if you've ever felt like you're doing everything to stay afloat, and it still isn't flowing, thank you for being here. Feel free to hit like, subscribe, or even drop a comment below. It helps YouTube know you're part of this quiet shift. Your space speaks. Wisdom listens.